I'm gonna just take a little load off right now. My first guest, y'all, is an author, a motivational speaker, and former Mrs. Florida American 2020. She is also the International Beauty Queen Elite and Mrs. Queen of the World 2021. Y'all, please help me welcome the queen herself, Mrs. Katrina Spagnoletti. Woo-hoo! You, darling. How are you?
I am great. I am great.
Welcome to the show. We are delighted to have you here.
I am delighted to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So listen, I just want to jump in and say, you have 5 children?
I have 3 biological and I have twins. My husband has 2, a boy and a girl.
Really?
They're twins, so yes, I have 5 and 3 grandkids.
What an amazing woman. You do not look like you're a day over 30.
Thank you.
My goodness. So what's it like having a big, happy family? A big blended happy family.
I wouldn't say it's happy all the time.
Well, you know this TV. Let's act like it's happy. I'm just kidding. No, it's true. I mean, you have your ups and downs, anything, but the balance and love is always there, right? So you also have a testimony.
I do.
Let's talk about your testimony. You are a survivor.
I am.
Of childhood sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk us through your experience?
Well, like you said, I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse at the hands of my uncle when I was 5 years old and my stepfather in my teenage years. So there was a lot of chaos in me growing up. I like whenever I speak, I try to start off with this story because I think it's something that is so prevalent for people who have gone through childhood trauma to understand that your past does not define you unless you allow it to.
Correct.
At 15 years old, I didn't understand that I had a voice, and that is one of our most powerful weapons that we possess. Going through childhood sexual abuse with my stepdad, because I do have to stop and say, when I was 5 years old, I thought it was a dream. The mind is so powerful.
Wow.
It is so powerful. It protects you, but that dream was going over and over and over again. But I just didn't believe it because it was someone who was supposed to protect me and love me, but in turn took advantage of me. So as a teenager, my mom, she escaped from my father. He was very abusive towards her. My first memory of my childhood really is my mother crying with 3 children. And that is one of the hardest stories to tell. I don't tell it too often because I do get choked up. But she's a very strong woman. She escaped from my biological father, who was not around. And she found this Prince Charming. At least we thought she did. Even I thought she did. He took over, and he was a stepdad to us. Even I would consider him a father because my biological father wasn't around.
Picture, yes.
But eventually, as he groomed me and the family, because that's exactly what they do, is they groom a child, they groom the family to have that trust, to bring that child closer, just to look like a great person. He was actually the president of the Postal Union, so his fighting for the rights of the employees to be treated great and to be honored, And but he held this little secret of coming into my room and sleeping with me when my mother was at work, and she worked at night. So she worked the graveyard shift. So he took advantage of that practically as much as he possibly could. But at 15 years old, seeing my mother go through what she went through with my biological father and seeing her so happy, I just couldn't tell what was going on with me. And I didn't understand at 15 years old how to get out of this. I was living a lie. I was living a life of depression. And so one day I decided the best way to stop all of this is to attempt to take my life. And of course, as you can see, I'm right here. I'm still here.
Won't he do it?
I remember the next day waking up after taking a half a bottle of pills. I woke up. I didn't understand why the universe was putting me through all of this. And I didn't know how to escape. But in that same breath, I had a premonition that I was wearing a red suit and I was standing in front of an audience and I was speaking. I didn't know why I was there, what I was speaking about.
Right.
But at that time, I thought I had a purpose. I thought I was going to be famous. I thought I was going to be famous. And it gave me a goal. And that's something that's really important when you go through trauma. You have to have a purpose in life because if you don't, you sink into depression. So
true.
This picture here, I mean, it
tells, look at you.
Whenever I see that, I think
beautiful.
September 5th, 2020, as
wow.
the world was basically stopped. I went into the judge's office, into the judge's room, because that's 50% of our scoring when we were competing for pageants. And I remember wearing this red dress, and my coaches told me, my pageant coaches.
So you brought it into fruition.
Yeah,
I love it.
My coaches told me, do not wear that dress. Your personality is too powerful. Red is a power color. You're going to overwhelm the judges. I showed this dress to my husband one day, and his eyes were so wide. And he was like, you've got to wear that dress. So I trusted my husband with everything.
Of course.
I wore the red dress, went into interview, and I heard this voice say, oh my goodness, I love that dress. And that voice was Randy Stone, the founder of the Village People.
Are you serious? YMCA, get out. Now, when you saw him, did you do this?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was trying to win a pageant.
Just messing with you.
But I remember walking in there, and it made me feel so good that I trusted my husband.
Yes.
And I remember the first question that was asked of me. The judge asked me, he's a prominent a plastic surgeon in the Orlando area. He said, if you had your dream job, whether you're working towards it now or you have it now, what would it be? I looked at him and I said, you know what? I'm glad you asked me that question. I just wrote a book entitled What My Mother Never Knew during COVID about how I healed from childhood sexual abuse.
Correct.
The whole interview was about the darkest day of my life. And on September 5th, 2020, I was crowned Mrs. Florida American 2020. Not only was
but wait a minute, you were crowned in 2020. You captured your very first title at 56 years old, right?
56 years old.
At 56 years old. It reminds me of the quote, you are never past your prime.
You're never. Even today, it doesn't matter how old you are. You just have to try.
It's
That's
so
the first
true.
thing you try. You step into that arena.
Confidence and courage.
You don't know what's going to happen.
Yes.
But I was also the first Black woman to ever be crowned in the history of Mrs. Florida, and the oldest woman at the time.
Oh, congratulations to
I'm
you.
Very proud, very
Listen,
proud.
and you're not competing against just people in our age group, because I'm in the 50s club too. You're competing against like 30-year-olds and 20s, and she won, y'all.
I won.
She has the crown.
Yes, I did.
She has the crown, darling. So what other initiatives were you a part of while you were Mrs. Florida America?
Well, of course, I was able to get on platforms to tell my story, because that was the whole reason for me doing it. At first, I will admit, like a lot of women, you see the glamour, you see the glitz, and that's why you want to initially start. But once you start speaking and once you see the reaction,
it tells the
they're
tale.
like, who is this woman?
Correct.
So, and what does she want? What does she need to say?
This brings me to your book cover right here. Can I see this book cover?
Absolutely.
Listen, y'all, this is such a lovely book cover that you look at it and you go, oh my God, she's so beautiful. And then you start reading it and you realize that she's a survivor.
I am.
And you didn't give up.
And there's so many of us.
There's so many survivors.
So many of us.
And you're advocating for them on your platform with your crown representing so beautifully.
I am.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an honor to have you on the show.
It has been an honor to be here.
Thank you. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't y'all go nowhere. Ooh.